Have you ever wondered what really turns the heads and hearts of the world's most famous men? Not just the pretty smiles, the talent, or the elegance, but something deeper. Something like intelligence. The kind that doesn't flash on camera but sits quietly behind the scenes, shaping every conversation, every glance, every shared silence. Today, we're diving into a question that fans have whispered about for years, but never really got a clear answer to. Which BTS member is secretly hoping to marry someone with a high IQ? Not someone who just looks smart in glasses or quotes poetry for the aesthetic, but someone who can challenge them mentally, help solve life's toughest questions, make them rethink everything, and even humble them in an argument, or to dot in the chaotic whirlwind of fame, luxury, and endless schedules. What does it mean for a global icon to say, "I want someone I can learn from," and who among the seven would dare say that publicly? Or quietly keep it as a secret wish? Is it the poetic genius who always reads between the lines? The shy one who stays quiet in interviews but notices everything? Or maybe the one who always wins games on variety shows, not because of luck, but strategy? This isn't just about IQ scores or fancy degrees. This is about mental chemistry, the kind of bond where wit flirts before the hands do. So get ready for a countdown that might just surprise you, humble you, and make you rethink who your BTS bias is. Each member on this list has left subtle and sometimes not so subtle clues about the kind of partner they dream of, and we're here to connect those dots. So let's play a game before we start. Think to yourself, who do you believe values intellect in a future wife the most? Who might be hiding a secret preference for brains over beauty? And whose past interviews, song lyrics, or even friendships have hinted at this hidden desire? Because by the end of this list, you might find that the member you thought was all heart is actually all about the mind, ready to test your instincts? Let's begin! Number 7. J-Hope, the puzzle lover behind the smile. On stage, J-Hope is all sunshine and swagger, always moving, always dazzling, always making it look easy. But peel back the beat drops and the camera-ready grins, and you'll find a side of Hoseok that rarely gets the spotlight, a man who's quietly obsessed with structure, order, and intelligence. Not the flashy, I know everything kind of smart, but the curious, analytical, can dash you dash solve dash this dash with dash me kind. And when it comes to choosing a life partner, that subtle love for mental compatibility shows up more than fans realize. Let's rewind a bit. J-Hope has always said he values someone who can teach me things. In older interviews, he's mentioned being drawn to people who are organized, insightful, and thoughtful. And that's no surprise. Offstage, J-Hope is one of the most meticulous members in BTS, known for being tidy, planning ahead, and even laying out his outfits in neat rows like a fashion chessboard. This isn't just about aesthetics, it's about how his brain works. Hoseok thrives when things make sense, when there's a system, and people who can decode complexity. That's his love language. You might not immediately link J-Hope with IQ, but if you really watch him during game shows, behind the scenes, or deep dive interviews, you'll notice how often he asks questions. He doesn't just react, he analyzes. He's curious. He wants to understand why people think the way they do. During BTS's iconic run BTS episodes, remember how often he cracked logic puzzles, spotted patterns before others, or even corrected answers subtly without drawing attention? That's the brain of someone who admires quiet intelligence and who finds confidence in someone else's clarity. Now imagine the kind of woman who'd hold his attention. It's not just someone who's book smart or good at trivia. It's someone who thinks deeply. Someone who can match his internal rhythm, not his dance tempo, but the mental tempo of a man who's constantly observing, reflecting, creating. J-Hope has said before that he wants a woman with good values and manners, but beneath that is the hint of something more. He wants a partner who makes decisions thoughtfully, who sees life through a sharp, discerning lens. There's also a charming vulnerability in the way J-Hope talks about love. He's admitted that he tends to overthink, that he worries about his future, about being understood. That means he's not looking for someone to just cheer him on. He wants someone who can calm his thoughts, maybe even outthink him. A woman whose intelligence doesn't intimidate him, but anchors him. It's no coincidence that when BTS members play mind games, whether it's mafia, strategy challenges, or the famous liar game, Hoseok always shines when he's partnered with someone clever. He mirrors them, plays off their moves, and becomes more playful, more alive. That's not performance. That's his ideal dynamic in action, playful intelligence. A little competition, a little admiration. In a way, J-Hope's desire for a smart partner is deeply romantic. Because, for him, intelligence isn't just about IQ, it's about compatibility. Emotional intelligence, decision-making, calm logic in the face of chaos. And in his world, which is often loud and overwhelming, what could be more attractive than someone who thinks before they speak, sees what others miss, and can outwit him with a smile? So, while J-Hope might not shout it from the rooftops, make no mistake, he wants a woman who can match his mind as well as his moves. Someone who can dance through life beside him, not just with their feet, but with their thoughts. And that brings us to the next member. Who's the one who nearly requires mental stimulation to fall in love? Number 6, Jin, the hidden strategist who loves a sharp mind. When people talk about Jin, they usually start with the obvious: worldwide handsome, the king of dad jokes. The eldest young who loves food, gaming, and pretending he's the most carefree guy in the room. But peel back the layers of laughter, and you'll find something most fans overlook: a quiet, calculating mind that not only notices everything but actually thrives on intelligence. And yes, that applies to what he's looking for in a wife, too. Jin has said in several interviews that he values someone with a good heart, and while that remains true, there are countless clues over the years that point to a deeper, more nuanced preference. He's drawn to women who are intellectually curious, logical, and emotionally intelligent. Why? Because Jin, despite his comedic persona, is one of the most thoughtful and strategic members of BTS, and if you're going to be his life partner, you better be able to keep up. Let's start with his education. Jin isn't just any idol. He graduated from Konkuk University, one of the top schools in Korea, majoring in film. That takes dedication, patience, and a brain wired for narrative and structure. Even while juggling trainee schedules, Jin stayed in school and remained academically disciplined. His professors praised his work ethic and creativity, so it makes perfect sense that he'd be attracted to someone who doesn't just bring beauty, but also brainpower and ambition. In various reality show appearances, whether it's BTS Run series, their cooking challenges, or games of strategy, Jin doesn't just play, he observes, he calculates. He times his jokes like a chess player planning 3 moves ahead. Remember those mafia episodes where Jin suddenly turned into a mental assassin? Where the man who usually made puns every 30 seconds suddenly outsmarted the rest of the group with cold logic and shocky and intuition. That's the real Jin. That's the man who's going to fall for someone with a sharp tongue, quick wit, and the ability to read a room faster than he can cook a steak. And speaking of cooking, one of Jin's most publicized hobbies, it's not just about stirring pots and seasoning meat. For Jin, cooking is another kind of mental discipline: recipes, measurements, plating, timing. It's like a science. And who better to enjoy that process with than someone who's as curious and detailed as he is? He's not looking for someone to simply admire his cooking. He wants someone who might challenge his recipe, suggest something wild, or teach him something new in the kitchen or in life. In older interviews, Jin also confessed something interesting when asked about his ideal type. He often hesitated before giving generic answers, but in more private or serious moments, he's mentioned that humor and intellect go hand in hand. He wants someone who gets his jokes, sure, but also someone who can keep up with his sarcasm, spot the hidden meaning behind his words, and maybe even beat him at wordplay, because, for Jin, flirting happens in the brain before it happens anywhere else. Emotionally, Jin is also a complex person. As the eldest member, he often suppresses his own fears or exhaustion for the sake of the younger members. This is a man who has said he cries alone and worries in silence so that others don't have to. So imagine how meaningful it would be for him to have a partner who understands without asking, who can read the subtext in his jokes and respond not with pity, but with wisdom. A woman who doesn't just comfort him, but helps him reframe the problem, bring logic to the chaos, and remind him that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. So yes, Jin wants someone soft and kind, but don't be fooled, he also wants someone sharp and strategic. A woman with a high IQ is not just a plus for Jin, it's a silent requirement. He won't say it out loud, because he's too polite, too private. But if you listen closely to his lyrics, his speeches, and his behind-the-scenes moments, you'll see the truth. Jin is waiting for someone who understands him, not just emotionally, but mentally. Someone who can debate, reflect, and see the world with clarity and depth. And the best part, if you can meet him on that intellectual level, you'll also get the full power of his emotional warmth, his humor, and his loyalty. That's a rare combination, and one he's saving for someone who can win both his heart and his mind. So, if Jin is secretly craving a woman with a brilliant mind behind her smile, who's next? Who's the BTS member whose entire identity might be shaped around intellectual connection and who once admitted he falls in love through conversation before appearance? Number 5. Jungkook, the quiet observer who craves mental chemistry. At first glance, Jungkook might not seem like the type to prioritize intelligence in a partner. After all, he's the golden magne blessed with talent in singing, dancing, sports, drawing, photography, and even boxing. Fans usually focus on his physical intensity, his dedication to perfection, and his chameleon-like ability to adapt and master nearly anything. But here's the twist. Beneath that layer of athleticism and artistry lies a mind that is always observing, always absorbing, and always yearning to be stimulated. And when it comes to love, that mental stimulation might just be the most important spark for him. Let's get one thing straight, Jungkook is a processor. He's not the type to speak before thinking. He watches people, studies their behavior, and notices the little things most would miss. This quiet, analytical side of him has been captured in countless behind-the-scenes clips, whether he's silently learning choreography in one corner while the others joke around, or when he's reading lyrics again and again, testing emotional resonance, not just pronunciation. That kind of mind, it needs a mental equal. Someone who doesn't just make him feel, but makes him think. Back in early interviews, when Jungkook was still in his teens, he described his ideal type in vague, youthful terms, a pretty girl who's nice. But fast forward to the Jungkook of 2026, and things have evolved. In more recent interactions, he's emphasized communication and deep conversations. He's mentioned wanting someone who he could talk to about anything and someone who can teach him new things. This is a man who, after years in the spotlight, is now more interested in growth than perfection. And that includes emotional and intellectual growth. What's even more telling is Jungkook's track record with hobbies and how obsessively he masters them. He doesn't just dabble, he dives deep. Whether it's guitar, painting, working out, or producing music, he approaches learning with focus and humility. This is the sign of someone who deeply respects knowledge. So it's only natural that the woman who captures his heart would be someone who's passionate about what she knows and isn't afraid to challenge him intellectually. In many ways, Jungkook's attraction to intelligence isn't just romantic, it's a survival instinct. Being the youngest in BTS, he grew up under the mentorship of 6 older, wiser members. From Namjoon's philosophical depth to Yoongi's brutal honesty, Jungkook's environment was shaped by minds that taught him how to think critically and act decisively. That upbringing didn't just influence his artistry, it shaped the kind of love he seeks. One that's rooted in understanding, mutual respect, and the power of meaningful conversations. There's another layer, too. Jungkook is famously introverted, especially when it comes to dating. He's admitted to being shy, guarded, and even overwhelmed when it comes to expressing emotions. That's why a woman with a sharp mind and emotional intelligence would be his safe space. Not someone who demands attention, but someone who senses his silence, who speaks volumes through small actions, who offers insight instead of pressure. And let's not forget his love for gaming and strategy-based fun. Whether it's escaping rooms, planning surprise events, or playing psychological games on variety shows, Jungkook lights up when things require thought and focus. He enjoys unpredictability, not the chaotic kind, but the intelligent kind. The woman who keeps him guessing, who isn't afraid to debate or call him out with facts and wit. That's the one who'll keep his attention for life. So, while Jungkook may be the poster child of physical excellence, don't be fooled, his heart beats for intellect. He wants someone who understands his silences, someone who teaches without lecturing, someone who can talk about the stars one moment and unpack human emotion the next. Someone whose words echo in his mind long after the conversation ends, because for Jungkook, love isn't just about chemistry. It's about mental rhythm. And if you can match that tempo, you just might become the woman he's been quietly waiting for all along, now that we've uncovered the gold in Maknae's hidden craving for brains and depth. The next question becomes even more thrilling. Which BTS member practically admits he falls in love only with women who challenge him intellectually, and even once said, "I can't date someone who doesn't make me think"? Number 4. RM, the philosopher who falls in love with your mind first. You knew he'd be on this list. You felt it. Because if there's one member of BTS who has never hidden his admiration for brilliance, intellectual, emotional, artistic hits, Kim Namjoon. The leader, the lyricist, the man who can quote Nietzsche and then switch to Kanye in the same breath. RM doesn't just value intelligence, he's enchanted by it. And for him, finding a life partner who isn't just pretty or nice, but mentally captivating is non-negotiable. Let's talk about how this shows up not just in his interviews, but in the very way he lives. RM has said many times that what attracts him the most is a deep thinker. He doesn't even pretend otherwise. This is a man who reads philosophy books in hotel rooms after sold-out stadium tours, who walks through museums alone to feel something real, who writes lyrics that dissect existential dread, cultural identity, heartbreak, and societal contradictions with the precision of a scholar and the vulnerability of a poet. When he's asked about his ideal type, Namjoon doesn't give textbook answers. He says things like, someone who can carry a conversation, someone who makes me reflect, someone with a unique perspective. It's not about being book smart or getting perfect test scores, it's about how you think, how you express yourself, how you take apart the world and put it back together in a sentence that makes his breath hitch. And let's not forget, RM didn't become a global superstar by accident. From the very beginning, he was the brain behind BTS's backbone. He was scouted not just for rap skills, but for his IQ, reportedly 148, his writing ability, his hunger for knowledge. He used to spend hours on internet forums debating ideas, refining his thoughts. So it only makes sense that his soulmate would be someone he can debate, discuss, and dream with. He's admitted that he often feels misunderstood, that despite the love and fame, his mind is always running a kind of beautiful chaos. That's why the woman who wins his heart isn't the loudest in the room, but the one who surprises him with insight. The one who listens deeply, questions him in a way that makes him stop, think, and smile. Someone who challenges his certainty with compassion and truth. If you really want to see his type in action, rewatch any BTS content where RM engages in strategy, conversation, or abstract thinking. Watch how his body language changes when someone says something intelligent. His eyes sharpen. He leans in. He lights up. Whether it's discussing art in Switzerland or the ethics of fame in a podcast, RM is in his element when he's mentally engaged. For him, love is an intellectual journey, not just a feeling, and it's not just about what she knows, it's about why she knows it. RM is deeply reflective. He appreciates curiosity, even over credentials. You don't need a PhD to impress him, you need a mind that wanders, questions, and hungers. You need to read books not to boast, but because you genuinely want to understand the world. There's also something heartbreakingly honest about his own vulnerabilities. Rem has spoken about feeling pressured, burdened by being a leader, and often feeling alone with his thoughts. Can you imagine what it would mean to him to finally find someone whose brain is a resting place for his own? Someone he doesn't need to explain himself to, because she already gets it? Yes, he's physically attracted to natural beauty and poise, but it's always the mind that hooks him in and keeps him anchored. RM's ultimate fantasy isn't some whirlwind romance, it's a long conversation that never ends. One where the silence is just as profound as the words, where thoughts intertwine, collide, and leave both people better than they were before. So if you've ever dreamed of being with her, know this, it's not about the outfit, the makeup, the follower count. It's about your inner world, your ideas, your questions, the things you think about at 3 a.m. because the woman he falls for won't just be someone to walk red carpets with, she'll be someone to walk through the mind's labyrinths with, hand in hand. And now that we've entered the territory of deep love through intellect, it's time for the next surprise. Who's the BTS member who masks his mental depth with humor but secretly falls hardest for women who are smarter than him and actually intimidate him a little? Number 3. Suga, the tactical genius who falls for intellect over emotion. You might expect Suga to be at the top of a list about emotional depth or musical genius, but when it comes to choosing a future partner based on intellect, Min Yoongi sits in a very particular space. He doesn't just want a smart woman. He needs one, quietly, without fanfare, and maybe even without saying it directly. But make no mistake, the sharpest mind in the room will always have his attention, even if he pretends otherwise. Let's rewind for a second. Suga is often labeled as cold or detached in BTS's chaotic emotional soup. But that's a misunderstanding. He's not cold, he's precise, calculated, honest, and deeply reflective. His quiet demeanor masks one of the sharpest, most tactically brilliant minds in the entire Korean music industry. This is the man who writes, produces, arranges, and oversees complex sonic landscapes with ruthless focus, who thinks in layers and who lives in subtext. And that same attention to detail? He's looking for it in the woman he brings into his life. You see, for Suga, love isn't chaos. Love is clarity. And clarity can only happen when two minds move at the same wavelength. That's why he's confessed in past interviews that emotional compatibility isn't enough for him. He needs conversation. He needs nuance. He needs the kind of partner who doesn't just feel, but thinks deeply, who can challenge his assumptions, who won't crumble in silence when things get hard, but who analyzes the storm with him and helps chart the path forward. And here's where it gets really interesting. Suga doesn't announce this desire. He's not Rem, who will publicly muse about philosophical connections. He's not J-Hope, who'll quietly observe and smile. Suga masks his attraction to intelligence behind dry sarcasm, blunt truths, and fierce independence. But when he meets someone truly smart, someone whose intelligence isn't performative but practical, strategic, aware, you can see it in his eyes. His walls lower. His tone softens. His respect grows. There's evidence of this in how he treats collaboration. When working with artists, whether Korean legends like you or global icons like Halsey, Suga gravitates toward those who bring more than just vocals. He gravitates toward creators, toward minds that push boundaries, toward people with ideas. And behind the scenes, staff have often noted that Yoongi becomes most engaged not when people flatter him, but when they question him. When they ask, "Why did you use that chord?" Or "What if this verse flipped the emotion?" That's when he lights up. His lyrics tell the same story. Whether it's First Love, The Last, or Amygdala, Yoongi writes with a brutal intellectual honesty that cuts through poetic fluff. He doesn't just want the listener. He wants someone who dissects his metaphors, catches the double meanings, and asks the uncomfortable questions. And in relationships, that's the woman who will not only win his heart but keep it. There's also a psychological layer. Suga has admitted to long bouts of depression, overthinking, and existential doubt. His music has literally become a journal of survival through anxiety and identity crisis, which means that the woman by his side must be mentally strong, not just emotionally warm. Someone with emotional intelligence, yes, but also intellectual stability. Someone who can separate feelings from facts, who knows when to talk and when to wait. Who knows that sometimes the smartest thing to do is nothing, and here's the kicker, Suga is one of the most private members of BTS when it comes to love. Which means if he ever chooses to share his life with someone, she will have to understand the unspoken rules of discretion, autonomy, and trust. That takes a mature mind. A woman who isn't clingy, who doesn't seek validation through social media posts or status symbols, but who knows her own worth and lets that silent strength speak for itself. So while Suga may never say, "I want a smart wife" out loud, everything about his life, his work ethic, his lyrical genius, his emotional distance, and his creative collaborations scream the truth. He wants someone who thinks 3 steps ahead, someone who can walk beside him, not behind, someone who won't fall apart when he does, but will help him rebuild with logic and grace. Because to Yoongi, love is not just about chemistry. It's about trust in your partner's brain, their discernment, their decisions, and their ability to sit in a room full of noise and hear the same silence that he does. And now, as we get closer to the top of the list, which BTS member might surprise you the most? Because although he plays the emotional card in public, he's secretly obsessed with a woman's intelligence in private. And even once said, "If she's not smarter than me, I get bored." Number 2. Jimin, the lover of layered minds who falls for wisdom over words. Soft eyes, shy giggles, romantic lyrics, emotional vulnerability. That's the Jimin the world knows. The one who sings about longing, who touches hearts with a whisper, and who holds onto people with tenderness that feels almost sacred. But buried beneath that gentle aura is a mind that hungers for complexity. Not loud complexity. Quiet, intricate, layered thinking that unfolds slowly like a well-written novel or a painting you don't understand until the 5th time you stare at it. Because here's the truth no one talks about enough. Jimin is obsessed with intelligence, especially the kind that reveals itself only when no one's watching. Let's start with a quote. In an older interview, Jimin once said, "I like people who think before they speak." He didn't elaborate, but that one sentence says everything. It hints at his internal rhythm, the way he moves through life, observing, reflecting, sensing more than he lets on. Because Jimin may be emotional, but he's not impulsive. He's a strategist of emotion, a master of nuance. And when it comes to love, he notices the little things, how you solve problems, how you comfort someone, how you hide your frustration when others aren't paying attention. That's not just emotional intelligence. That's mental insight. And he craves it. What fans often overlook is just how much Jimin values wisdom. It's why he's drawn to older people, why he's always asking his Hyung's deep questions off camera, why he spends hours replaying emotional moments just to understand what really happened. His brain doesn't stop at "how did that feel?" It goes one layer deeper. Why did that feel like that? What shaped that reaction? That's the kind of man who falls for thoughtfulness, awareness, precision in emotional language, and here's what makes it even more intense. Jimin is someone who struggled with self-doubt for years. He's confessed, time and time again, that he's hard on himself, that he questions his worth, that he wrestles with his emotions late at night when no one's around. So imagine what kind of partner suits that kind of chaos, not with hugs and kisses, but with clarity. A woman who doesn't just tell him you're enough, but who shows him why, who offers logical frameworks for feelings, who sees his overthinking not as weakness, but as evidence of a sensitive, searching mind. In BTS content especially, the more unfiltered behind-the-scenes clips, you can catch glimpses of this preference. Watch how Jimin lights up when someone explains something to him, how curious he gets during philosophical or strategic conversations. He'll lean in, eyebrows slightly furrowed, lips parted, not because he's confused, but because he's hooked. It's mental intimacy, and he treasures it. Even the way he performs reveals this. Every movement in his dance isn't just technical, it's intentional. There's analysis behind every gesture. He's always reading the emotional map of the room, responding in micro-expressions, recalibrating with each beat. That's not just emotional sensitivity, it's mental agility. And that means his ideal woman? She has to match that. She has to see the world in layers. She has to respond not just to his face, but to the shifts in his soul. And to do that, she needs a mind just as complex as his. Jimin has also shown insecurity around feeling behind intellectually compared to members like Namjoon or Yoongi. But here's the beautiful irony. That very insecurity is why he values intelligence so deeply. He's not intimidated by smart women. He's enchanted by them. He wants to learn from them. He wants to be better because of them. For Jimin, falling in love with a smart woman isn't a threat, it's a gift. He once said he loves women with depth. Not just emotions, ideas, experiences. Someone who doesn't just cry during a sad movie, but asks questions after. Who reads not for status, but for soul expansion. Who can hold silence like it's sacred and speak like it's poetry. That's his fantasy. That's his safe place. That's his fire. So while the world paints Jimin as the emotional one, the romantic one, the one who melts at kindness, know this. He's drawn to minds that dissect the world quietly. Minds that are aware of shadows. That can call him out gently but firmly. That won't drown in his storms but will throw him a rope made of logic and light. Because at the end of the day, Jimin doesn't just want love. He wants to be understood, truly, mentally, soulfully, and only a woman with deep intellectual presence will ever reach that final locked door in his heart. Now that we've unmasked Jimin's secret desire for mental connection, who could possibly outrank him? Who's the BTS member who openly admits intelligence is a deal breaker, who literally said, "I can't respect someone who doesn't think deeply," and whose entire romantic philosophy is rooted in the mind first, heart second? Number 1. V, the mind-addicted romantic who can't love without depth. Of all the members in BTS, Kim Taehyung is the one most often misunderstood. People see the dreamy eyes, the baritone voice, the vintage fashion, the spontaneous charm, and they assume he's the whimsical artist who floats through life following nothing but emotion and mood. But that's only half the truth. Because behind that laid-back mystique lies a mind that's ruthlessly selective, deeply curious, and utterly obsessed with what's going on beneath the surface. If she's not intellectually stimulating, she won't last 5 minutes in his world. Yes, Taehyung is a romantic, but he's a cerebral romantic. His ideal woman isn't just beautiful, she's enigmatic, mentally alive, and emotionally articulate. She reads between the lines, asks better questions than he does, and gets quiet in moments that matter. Taehyung has literally said in interviews, "I can't be with someone who doesn't think deeply." It wasn't a throwaway comment, it was a confession. Because for him, the brain is where love begins. Let's talk about how that plays out. Taehyung is a man who romanticizes curiosity. He travels not for content, but for experience. He visits museums not to pose, but to feel history whisper through the art. He buys vintage cameras not for aesthetics, but to study how light and memory dance. This is a person who's constantly thinking even when he pretends he's not. And the woman he falls for? She has to be someone whose inner world is as rich, complicated, and poetic as his own. In a now famous interview, when asked what attracts him, Taehyung paused before saying, "I like people who know themselves well, who don't try to impress, who speak with sincerity and knowledge." That's not a compliment to confidence, it's a confession about intellectual presence. Taehyung is drawn to minds that are steady, yet inquisitive, that know when to say something that changes the room, that challenge him not with rebellion, but with wisdom. And if you track his conversations, his lyrics, his social posts, there's a pattern. He speaks in layers. His love for jazz, for black and white cinema, for obscure photographers, for philosophical poems, it's all pointing to the same thing. He craves mental intimacy. He wants to build a world with someone, one where every object, song, and silence carries shared meaning. But here's where it gets even deeper. Taehyung is someone who's highly introspective, but rarely shows it in public. He's been open about feeling misunderstood, about carrying sadness in silence, about needing someone who gets it without needing long explanations. This is a man who said, "I think a lot about love, about what it means to really know someone. Not just their smile, but what's behind it." So what kind of woman does a man like that fall for? One who listens differently, one who sees the unspoken, one who thinks in metaphors, who asks why before she reacts, who carries calm not because she's quiet, but because she's confident in her mind. Taehyung has also said he doesn't care about traditional success or flashiness. He's not seduced by fame or status. What impresses him is understated brilliance. A woman who doesn't boast about her intelligence, but moves through life with depth. Who picks her words carefully. Who has convictions, not just opinions. Who can hold her own in silence and in storytelling. Even in BTS's internal dynamics, V is often the one asking the most philosophical, open-ended questions. He doesn't want surface answers, he wants meaning. That's why, when he's drawn to someone in variety shows or social moments, it's never the loudest or most obvious person in the room. It's always the one who says something a little offbeat, a little thoughtful. That's the key to his hard dot. So if you're dreaming of being the one Taehyung chooses, know this: you won't get there through looks, style, or fame. You'll get there through conversation, through knowing who you are, through surprising him with a story he's never heard before, or a perspective he never considered, through showing him that while the world can admire his face, you see his mind. Because for Kim Taehyung, love isn't about perfection, it's about perception. And only a woman whose intellect is rooted in self-awareness, curiosity, and a poetic grip on reality will ever truly match him. And there you have it. From J-Hope's quiet admiration of thoughtful order, to V's relentless desire for intellectual intimacy. These aren't just 7 global icons. They're 7 different minds, each searching, in their own way, for a woman who thinks. Because, in the end, love fades. Looks change. But the mind? That's forever.